Today, we are going to be having a little bit of a shorter show. We're going to break down week 10 of the 2025 NFL season, and it got off, obviously, to a little bit of a rocky start. Some low scoring defensive games this week. In the money line, I did end up going 10 and 4. That puts us at 104 and 45 on the year. Very good percentage there in the money line. In best bets, we only ended up going 2 for 5. That puts us at 31 for 50 on the year, which is actually the same position we were at through 10 weeks a year ago. So we're on track there. It was a bad week for me in bets. Obviously, the Browns did not come through at 2.5. New England got a big upset win over Tampa. I had the Bucs side of it. Arizona, which is a bad bet. But we did get the Lions. I thought that was the easiest cover of the week. I thought they were going to go in there and stomp the Commanders. We'll talk about Dan Campbell's change to play calling. And the Bears, they did cover 3.5, though it was a sweat. Jackson Dart was obviously leading for most of that game. He gets hurt. Russell Wilson comes in, and the Giants' interim head coach is Mike Kafka. So Denver beat the Raiders 10-7. I said I wasn't going to touch this game. I thought if there was a side to take in the game, it would have been the Raiders. I said the Broncos may be the worst 8-2 team I've ever seen. I know why you are going to point to the fact the Eagles are 7-2 and they just beat the Packers 10-7 last night. To me, the difference in that game was the Eagles are taking on one of the premier teams in the NFC in a 26-degree game on the road. Denver is at home against a division rival who looked like they had quit a couple weeks ago. And the Raiders scored a touchdown in the first drive of the game, did not score since. Bo Nix is playing with Abby feet in the pocket. He had a few touchdowns that he overthrew. He had a couple bad interceptions. And now Denver this week. They do host Kansas City coming off a bye. I haven't looked at the lines yet, but I would rather guess that the Chiefs are going to be one of my best bets this week. Um, I just don't think that Denver is a very good team. I think if I had to place the order in the AFC West, I'd put the Chargers over them. I think I'd put the Chiefs over them. I know Denver is 8-2, but again, their best two games this season have came against the worst two defenses this season in the Bengals and the Cowboys, who ironically were both on byes this week. And obviously, Dallas had to deal with the Marshawn Kneeland situation. The NFL lost Paul Tagliabue, the former commissioner, as well over the weekend. So a very, very strange week in the NFL. It kind of had this ominous feel over it. Some of these games you just didn't know what to make of it, including Falcons Colts too. Daniel Jones turns the ball over once again. Everybody wants to know if Daniel Jones is going to turn back into a pumpkin. I think at this point, with the Texans and Davis Mills coming all the way back and upsetting the Jaguars, that the Colts are in firm position to win this division. Atlanta's had some close losses on the road the last couple of weeks at New England, at Indy. They are two AFC opponents, and with Tampa losing to New England, it does a little bit open the door ajar for them to get back in this NFC South race. But they got to get on a winning streak. It starts this week for them against Carolina. I said coming into the year, I wasn't sure about Michael Penix as a franchise quarterback. He makes some nice throws. He's just a little bit too inconsistent for me. They finally have gotten the run game going with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. The end of that game was weird. There was an intentional grounding play where there was supposed to be 11 seconds left on the clock. There ended up being 9. They ended up taking into overtime. The official decides to give the Colts the coin toss when the Falcons were the away team there in Germany. Commanders Dolphins this week in Spain is going to be a crap show. I'm not touching that game. I told you guys I somewhat refuse to touch international games just because I don't have a good feel for them. Weird things can happen. But Jonathan Taylor is upping up his MVP case over 30 carries, about 245 yards. Really the engine that drove this Colts team, very similar to the year that Saquon Barkley had last year in Philadelphia. I don't know what to make of Browns Jets. Justin Fields at 50 yards passing. Jets got a kickoff return and a punt return back for a touchdown. The Browns are obviously tanking. Dylan Gabriel is not the answer. I've come out here every week for the past 10 weeks and said Shador Sanders should have been the week one starter, and Shador is not looking like he's going to play at all this season. Um, Weird things happen in the NFL, right? The Ravens are now three straight victories. They beat the Vikings. Lamar Jackson played okay. It was mostly a defensive effort. They got three turnovers off JJ McCarthy. And now they'll go to Cleveland, and the Browns will probably somehow maybe find a way to win that game. And I'm not picking it, but I'm just saying weird things happen. Dylan Gabriel's not an NFL quarterback. The Jets were looking ahead to 2026, and the Browns are looking ahead apparently to never lasting ever. Um, we should have known when the Browns were favored by 2.5. The Browns should never be favored by 2.5. It actually ended up being 3.5 by game time to never pick the Browns. Carolina lost to New Orleans. This was another upset this week. I said be careful about this game. I said it was the ultimate trap game. I said everybody's going to love Carolina now that they beat Green Bay, and the Saints always play the Panthers tough and be careful. And Bryce Young had his first bad game at home this year. Tyler Shoaff did what he could. Saints get out of there 17-7. And now it's really the Saints, Titans, Raiders, Browns, and Jets. Those five teams, four in the AFC, one in the NFC, battling for the number one pick. New England to me made a statement. I know Tampa Bay's got a lot of guys out, including Mike Evans, who's going to basically be out for the season. But I thought going off their bye, and with New England's offensive line issues, Drake May and Justin Herbert are the two most hit quarterbacks in the league, even more so than Cam Ward, which is astonishing to me, at least, for those two franchise quarterbacks. But I thought Bowles would dial up a lot of pressure. I thought the Tampa Bay defense would get to Drake May. And instead, Drake May made an incredible throw to Stephon Diggs for a touchdown right before the half. And then the second half turned into the Travion Henderson show with two explosive runs to the end zone. New England is just so well coached. I'm impressed by Mike Vrabel. A lot of people loved him in Tennessee because of how he got to the AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill. I always thought that was a little bit of a fluke run. I know they had Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown at the skill position, but maybe it was more the roster. At the end there, Vrabel got a year off. He got to consult with the Browns, and he's came in. And this Patriots roster that was a complete disaster a year ago with Gerard Mayo. They had Jacoby Brissett starting week one. They won three games. They got the fourth pick of the draft. And yet here they are with Drake May and Mike Vrabel. And Drake May is a clear MVP candidate, and the Patriots have a real shot at the number one seed. For Tampa, again, I think they're still going to win this division. They're favored to win the NFC South. But all of a sudden, with Detroit winning, Philly winning, Rams winning, they're in fourth place out of the division winners. I already mentioned what Baltimore did to Minnesota. Their defense is obviously turning around since the first 4 weeks of the season. JJ McCarthy has been really hot and cold this season. It's one of the reasons why I picked Minnesota to finish last in that very good NFC North division. For Baltimore now, they are primed to win the AFC North with over a 60% chance. I don't know what happened to Buffalo. There's rumors going around that Josh Allen may have had the flu. Who knows? I thought the Dolphins were the side here. It's why I didn't touch the game. The Dolphins always play the Bills tough, and we saw how New England all those years would struggle when they would go down to Miami. Um, but Tagovailoa and the Dolphins just absolutely beat the Bills to the woodshed. A lot of people are saying the Bills are pretenders, they're not as good. A lot of people say that they would take the Patriots over them right now, considering New England went into Buffalo, they won, and now they have a two-game lead in the AFC East. I'm still not sure when push comes to shove. Buffalo really wanted Jalen Waddle at the trade deadline. Miami said no. I'm very surprised they even called and picked up the phone, considering it was a division rival. I think it's an admittance by Buffalo that they need more receiver help. Maybe they feel like Josh Allen has to be more Superman this year. And I think the loss of Dalton Kincaid potentially for them could be huge. Again, Davis Mills with an incredible comeback for the Texans. Jacksonville was up 29-10. This was the one blowout in the 1 o'clock window, and then it wasn't. And I don't know what's going down there in Jacksonville. They played some weird games this year. William Cohen and the Jags were off to that hot start. They obviously beat Kansas City with that pick six on that Monday night return in week five. But ever since then, they haven't looked like the same team. They don't look like a real playoff team. And as I said going into it, this was the battle of second place in the AFC South. The Giants couldn't move the ball after Jackson Dart left the game. It probably cost Brian Dable his job for blowing that game in the wintry conditions in Chicago with white snow dropping down. But this is a Bears team who, for years, has been defense first, then offense. They won 12 games in the NFC North in 2019 with Mitch Trubisky sort of QB managing the role. And now they're won by their offense because their defense, again, until Russell Wilson came into the game, could not stop Jackson Dart on those design runs. The Giants are basically saying season's over. We'll see. There's a lot of speculation. Lane Kiffin could come from Ole Miss. I think if anything, Lane Kiffin's going to leave Ole Miss for LSU. I don't think he would leave for the New York Giants offensive job. I don't think Mike Kafka is going to be the guy. I've been pointing out there Bill Belichick to the Browns. We know Bill Belichick's resume with the Giants. If Bill obviously feels like Jackson Dart's a quarterback there, he feels like he can win. We know, again, Bill won two Super Bowls as the defensive coordinator of the Giants. I think that could be a landing spot for him. But with the Packers loss, the Minnesota loss, all of a sudden this Chicago team, who started 0-2, people were questioning whether Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams were the right combination. Here they are with 6 wins and in second place in the NFC North. Then the next game was Cardinals Seahawks. Again, this thing was over in 5 minutes. Seattle looks to be a wagon. They're legit. Sam Darnold is, in my opinion, the front runner right now to win MVP. He's the number one quarterback by Pro Football Focus. And Arizona, who was always in games this year, it's one of the reasons why I took them 6.5. They were not in games. And then the Rams got their revenge on San Francisco from the Week 5 loss. Remember when Sean McVay made that run call right up the middle? It was a disastrous call at the time. The Niners were all beat up. They went in there with no George Kittle, no Purdy, no Ayuk, obviously, no Pearsall, and they beat the Rams. Stafford put on an absolute clinic there. The Niners defense just all beat to hell. No Fred Warner, no Nick Bosa. You're starting to see the signs there. I said it at the end of the Week 5 game where Stafford looked very comfortable in the pocket. The Niners could not get a handle on him in the second half. Very similar in this game here for the whole game. The pass rush from San Francisco, even with Mac Jones completing near 80% of his passes, the pass rush from San Francisco was just non-existent. And then Dan Campbell took over the play calling for the Lions, and they were unstoppable. I find it very interesting he took it over from John Morton. Dan Campbell had never called the plays, even dating back to when he was hired in Detroit. We'll see. I always feel like unless you get on a roll, it's very rare that a head coach takes over play calling in the middle of the season and it works out. We'll see how it works out for the Lions this week as they go up against the Eagles defense on Sunday Night Football. For the Commanders, Dan Quinn's going to take over play calling. I don't think it's going to be the answer. Jaden Daniels may walk out. He may not be out for the season, but for all intents and purposes, the Commanders season is over. They've just had the season from hell with injuries. And then on Sunday night, Aaron Rodgers just looked old. He looked like he was afraid to get hit. This was a game early on that was a 5-3 Charger game. It was a game that I kind of thought it would be, right? The defensive line for Pittsburgh getting after that injured all hell Chargers offensive line. The Chargers defense keeping them in the game. But the second half, they found some windows with Vidal at running back, Len McConkey at receiver, Keenan Allen breaking the record for all-time Charger receptions. Um, and again, it's hard for me to doubt Jim Harbaugh. I think the offensive line injuries are going to come back to bite the Chargers at some point. Now, Pittsburgh lost to Cincinnati. You know revenge is on their mind. I know the Bengals are coming off their bye. But at 5-4 here, this is basically the Steelers' season, especially with the way the Ravens have been playing. I don't think Pittsburgh can go in, lose three in a row, and have complete control of the AFC North anymore, obviously. I think going into this week, right now, without looking at the lines, the Steelers and Chiefs are probably my two favorite picks of the week. And then 10-7, just like Thursday night last night, my Eagles defense played incredible. Jalen Phillips had a huge impact. Jackson Hunt made some big plays in the backfield. Jordan Love did not look comfortable at all. No Matthew Golden, no Tucker Kraft. I don't know if that hindered Green Bay's ability to go down the field. Obviously, we saw Romeo Dobbs also get injured in the second half. Nick Sirianni decides, for whatever reason, instead of kicking a field goal on 4th and 6 from about the 35 to go up 6 and make Green Bay drive the field with 20 seconds left, that he's going to take a shot with A.J. Brown. I don't know if A.J. Brown was in his ear or not. A.J. Brown had 2 targets the whole game for 13 yards up until that point. Saquon Barkley made a big play out of the passing game on a check down, and then Jalen Hurts hits Devontae Smith over the top. Joe Buck said it on the broadcast. It was the best 0-0 game at halftime. There was a lot of action. The game felt like it was played between the 50s. There was just not a lot of scoring being done. And Green Bay was my Super Bowl pick going into the year. Again, even before the Micah Parsons trade, Micah had a big impact. He had 6 or 7 pressures. The rest of the Green Bay defensive line, though, only had 1 pressure all night. And that's an even bigger story to me than the offense. The Eagles' offensive line is getting healthy. It was a very grinded out game. Saquon Barkley had holes early, he had holes late. Jalen Hurts did not play his best game. He had the one bad fumble on the opening drive when Philadelphia was moving it, which felt like it disrupted our home momentum. Again, there's going to be criticism in Philadelphia. The Eagles did not play their A game by any means. The defense obviously did, the offense did not. But to come away with a victory in that game, the way that game was being played, to be up 10-0 most of the game, for the Sirianni to trust his defense enough that, hey, if we don't get it, my defense is not going to allow you to get in field goal range. Obviously, it came down to a 64-yard kick that was nowhere close. These Eagles and Packers games are always weird defensive games. Remember, the fourth quarter in the wild card game was 15-10 going into the fourth quarter in Philadelphia. So I would not be surprised if these two teams match up again down the road. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.